What is up, my fellow Avengers and people of the Marvel Cinematic Universe? Welcome to my breakdown and review for Falcon and the Winter Soldier Episode 2, titled The Star-Spangled Man. This isn't DC and Stargirl or Starman, should I say? Star-Spangled Man introduced not only a lot of emphasis on John Walker's Captain America, kind of, making you feel like he's not so bad, but then towards the end, there was a little bit of a burn, which made me go, oh, if you know what I mean. But no, really, this was a really solid episode. I enjoyed it even more than the first episode. The first episode set up a good foundation for this show. Both characters hadn't quite yet met, but that allowed a little bit of personal fleshing out stories to be told to the audience. But in this episode, we finally got what fans wanted to see in this very show titled Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and that is indeed the Falcon and the Winter Soldier together. But we got a lot more development on the Flagsmashers, and overall, what can I say? Really enjoyed it, and with the way that the story is playing out and how we kind of zoned in on Baron Zemo by the very end, it really does feel like a very kind of long, extended movie, with the way this is just maintaining that Marvel Cinematic Universe formula, and keywords being cinematic universe, because this does very much so feel purely in line with that, whereas WandaVision did, don't get me wrong, but we obviously had big differences with that in terms of the sitcom vibes of each decade that they went in. But let's start at the very beginning of the episode. I really like how they showed the new Captain America to us, John Walker, because he kind of makes you kind of relate to him in such a sense that, okay, he's nervous to go out there in an old high school stadium. He's not trying to be anyone else or trying to be Steve. He just kind of wants to live up to somewhat of an expectation, because that does pour a shite ton of pressure onto you. He's been doing a lot of handshakes, senator meetings, there's been a lot of suits and speeches, and he just kind of wants to do the job, which involves throwing the shield, which we did see later on, and you could see how much more fun he was having rather than senator meetings. But don't forget, that kind of is a part of the job, as Battlestar pointed out to him, and it just kind of takes you way back into the day of when we saw Steve doing the very American propaganda-y kind of stuff way back in the early Marvel films. And for all intents and purposes, John Walker is Mr. Perfect, all without the super soldier serum. As the interviewer pointed out, he's got 3 medals of honor. The government have studied his body at MIT, where it tested off the charts in every measurable category. We saw him more or less flawlessly tossing the shield, bouncing off multiple targets, and then retaining it back in his arm. By the way, did that interview kind of feel way too PR-y? I mean, it was PR-y, but like in the boys kind of sense, with like Vought and what they do with the boys and how they're just presenting them to the world. And John Walker, I'm not saying he's like the boys level Homelander or the other characters there, but it just felt like way too synthetic. But let's move on to the reactions of Bucky and Sam, because Bucky is the one who has the main problem with this, just because Sam does as well. But I like the way they brought across in this episode how not only is Bucky feeling what Sam does, just like, okay, this guy isn't Steve Rogers, but should he really have the shield? But with Bucky, it's more enforced this episode, because he feels like Sam just kind of spat that back in Steve's face. Like, the shield shouldn't be going to John Walker. He gave it to you. That was his legacy, and you just basically threw it on the floor for them to pick it up. And this led to Bucky and Sam even meeting in the first place, because we had Sam looking at all of these posters of the new Captain America. Cap is back. Bucky says straight up that you shouldn't have given up the shield, Sam. This is wrong. This isn't what Steve wanted, and you just had no right to give up the shield. But I also get, like, you also identify with both characters. Sam only did what he felt is right, and he will work through this throughout the 6 episodes that we've got. He doesn't feel as if he can live up to Steve's name, and as a result of that, he didn't want to try and be someone he feels like he isn't. I mean, of course, he's got to learn that he can step into the shoes, and he doesn't have to be Steve. He can be himself. I'm really looking forward to seeing how that plays out, because in all the trailers we've seen Bucky and Sam both use the shield, and we know that John in this episode has got to the point of the end of the episode where there's a bit of cockiness in his attitude, and now there's like disdain between both parties. I admit Bucky and Sam weren't the most welcoming, but for understandable reasons, and now John is just like, yeah, watch your back. So like, I'm very fascinated to see how they're going to get the shield. Maybe they'll end up not necessarily working together, but as we know, Bucky and Sam are kind of going off as free agents by the end of the episode, and we have John wanting to work together, but obviously still pursuing the Flagsmashers. So I've got a feeling that maybe they're going to meet up at the same location. Like, they won't organize this meetup, but it'll be a similar thing to what happened with the fight scene in this episode, and maybe they just take the shield if John gets knocked out by one of the super soldiers. And I'm not sure how else they're going to get the shield. I know I've just interjected a theory randomly here, but it's not like John's going to just give that up. So I would love to know your thoughts as to how you think that is exactly going to go down. Anyway though, Sam quickly briefs Bucky on the mission, on the Flagsmashers, on the recording of the super guy at the end of last episode who broke out the bank. I did appreciate the big three, the wizards, the androids, and the aliens. And we got references to how old Bucky is again. He read The Hobbit when it first came out in 1937, and there was a whole little debate about sorcerers and wizards, and how sorcerers are just wizards without the hats. I guess Sam is more on Iron Man's side with how, you know, he said to Peter Parker in Infinity War, "You're embarrassing me in front of the wizards," if you guys remember that. Either way, let me just touch on that note. The comedy in this episode, I didn't feel like it was too forced on anything, which is a good thing, because sometimes, you know, people, even myself, can feel like sometimes it's hit and miss, or sometimes they try and interject that a little bit too much, and it distracts a little bit of the serious vibes you get with the messages of films, movies, or TV shows within the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But here there was a fine blend, and there was definitely a fine blend of the sincerity of the characters and how they're feeling, but also, of course, you want to see a bit of playful action, especially with how well it works between Bucky and Sam on this show, which is something I was kind of apprehensive about, but something I'm also feeling very happy about coming out of this episode is from the trailers. Don't get me wrong, Anthony Mackie and Sebastian Stan, I think they're both great, but I just didn't know like how I felt about the comedy or just the duo in the trailers. I was still looking forward to the show, but in this episode, now we've actually finally got to see them together. I felt like they're great together, and I can't wait to see more of them in the episodes that follow. Anyway though, they head to the location of where the Flagsmashers are, and it looks like initially to them they're smuggling weapons or something, but it later turned out to be medicine and vaccines and whatnot. They're already disagreeing on how to execute the mission. I already like this because you can tell they're gonna just respect each other more and more as more they work in the field together, so to speak. But we got cool little references to Bucky's time in Wakanda again, with how Sam says, you know, a little time in Wakanda, and you come out as the White Panther, and he's like, it's the White Wolf actually, which is, if you guys remember, what the Wakandans know or refer to Bucky as, the White Wolf. But to be honest, I just kind of think of Geralt of Rivia when I hear the White Wolf. This is where we get the fight scene from the trailers. I thoroughly enjoyed this. I felt like, at least off face value, the choreography was great. They thought there was a hostage in the truck, but it turned out to be, I would argue, the main flag smasher for now, Carly. And to be honest, I didn't expect Captain America, I don't want to call him Captain America, I'm going to say John. I didn't expect John to arrive with his partner, Battlestar. And to be honest, it was a cool intro. Like, I can't deny it. Like, I like how, and it was deliberately so done, they kind of want to warm you up to this character, even if you're rejecting him, just based off the fact that he isn't Steve Rogers. With the intro, seems like a nice enough guy. He doesn't seem arrogant initially. He doesn't seem like he's trying to replace anyone. And then here, for all intents and purposes, he is executing it seemingly as well as Steve Rogers would. I also like how Bucky just grabbed the shield. He probably didn't want to give it back in that moment. And then John just runs through and grabs it. And then there was a lot of cool action. And once again, like, he is very good. Like, when he threw the shield out for Brightstar to not get absolutely torn up by the tarmac of the road, and how he landed just on the shield, that was really cool. But then again, I was thinking, like, when he was, you know, going up the truck again and how he got punched by that super soldier, yeah, that's where you might run into problems, because he's not a super soldier himself. So in theory, that super soldier punch, you know, should have completely, I don't know, broken his ribs and sent his lungs back into his spine. Unless you want to argue, I suppose, some comic book logic of the suit he's wearing is got shock absorbers in it with some weird Stark techie government stuff, which is what I have to believe, because otherwise, that would completely obliterate your insides. Steve arguably could have taken that because he was super enhanced himself. I'm not gonna lie, I wouldn't be surprised if John somehow by the end of this season does actually end up with some super serum of his own, and with his kind of desperation to prove himself, but also prove himself different from Steve, he takes it and he becomes his own kind of roided up, almost antagonist, if you will. I could be wrong about that, but the new Captain America, I just feel like it's gonna go kind of south, especially for the message he gave to Sam and Bucky at the end. But as a lot of us knew going into this, if you've been watching my breakdowns or just in general, a big part of this is also figuring out, as Sam said, now it's up to us to find out why after 80 years there are 8 super soldiers running loose. John, yet again, at this part of the episode, doesn't seem like much of a dick. He tries to give them a ride. They just completely ignore him. They eventually get in the car, and he wants them to all work together because obviously that would just, you know, make more sense when taking down a big organization like this who are super enhanced. They go over the typical, you're not Captain America just because you got that shield. They try and discredit him as just not being as valiant or as good as Steve through a comment like Bucky saying, you ever jumped on a grenade? He's like, yeah, actually 4 times. So it's just like, for all intents and purposes, they're giving you every reason to like this guy, and I kind of like that setup. Then obviously they somewhat want to kind of tease you with that flipping on its head at the end. You could argue it's almost justified what he said to Bucky and Sam at the end of the episode, but I felt like he was starting to show his true colors in that police station by the end, because yeah, it's just when he was walking out, he was very happy-go-lucky. It was like he was almost too enjoying the new status that he has when he also got Bucky out of jail. It's kind of a good thing that Red Wing got completely yeeted as well, because as they revealed that they tracked Sam and Bucky through Red Wing because it's kind of government property. So without Red Wing now, they're truly the free agents, as Sam said, because otherwise they would be just tracked wherever they go, because since John and Battlestar have absolutely no leads. Once again, I do like the world building that is getting fleshed out post-blip. Like, we got teasers of that quite massively so, firsthand even in WandaVision when we saw people rematerializing, if you will, and here they kind of spoke about how things got chaotic. The GRC are doing the best they can to get things up and running smoothly post-blip, you know, through reactivating citizenship, social security, healthcare, basically just managing resources for the refugees who were displaced by the return. The thing about the Flagsmashers is they're getting a lot of supporters. As we saw when they arrived at their new hideout, the host is very grateful for just what their group is doing, anything we can do for the cause kind of thing. They call you Robin Hood. Every day more people love you, you'll find refuge wherever you go. Now this is where Carly gets a text though, saying, you took what was mine, I'm going to find you and kill you. And then later on in the episode, as they're getting away and then that guy stayed behind, he says that the Power Broker's men are after them, and that's who's found them. So Power Broker in the source material gives paying individuals, should I say, the ability, or should I say they're augmented with super strength. So I feel like it's sort of transparent now, Carly, or like that kind of Flagsmashers group, whether they once worked for Power Broker and then took the serum or whatever, they obviously took enough to, like, I don't know, jack up 8 people with super strength. And as we saw, Power Broker's men came for them in that moment later on in the episode, and we saw that guy ring saying, oh, they got away. He was probably contacting the big guy. And yeah, you could kind of see where I'm going with this. So I believe that's who sent the text to Carly, and that's what they're setting up there. We got the very line saying Power Broker's men. It's gonna be interesting to see exactly how they obviously adapt it in the MCU version, because obviously super serum is something that hasn't been, as Sam said, seen in around 80 years. So whether this criminal organization, or if we're going to see Power Broker himself, Curtis Jackson, what, I don't know. Adaptations are adaptations at the end of the day. I need to get a shirt printed with this. It's not always copy and paste. The one thing I can say is I'm very excited by these teasers that we're getting, even if it's just like, these are Power Broker's men. We also got a little bit of motivation, kind of more context from their point of view at least, with Carly saying that we're not playing no more. We can't let the same arseholes who were put back in power after the blip win. The GRC care more about the people who came back than the ones who never left. We got a glimpse of how things could be. After tomorrow, there's no going back. One world, one people. But it's like, the thing is, if it's one world, one people, the GRC care more about the people who came back, because imagine coming back after 5 years. You haven't had no job, you've been declared dead, your business, if you ran a business, has gone under, if you had a job, you might no longer have a position. And you know what, I don't know why I'm trying to understand twisted, terroristic kind of explanations, because that's usually, you know, the radicalized aspects of their opinions. But, you know, if it really is one world, one people, you can understand why a few billion coming back is one of the GRC's main priorities. But maybe they do feel really wronged, and we'll get a little bit of more context into maybe Carly's own personal story through a flashback or two in like a 30-second scene where she's been there the whole time and she felt wronged, or maybe some injustice was done. So what I feel like we require and what we need to see in the following episodes is what made these people this way, what kind of made them feel very wronged through one of those flashbacks, whether it's 30 seconds or a minute or something like that, where you can kind of get a semblance of an idea as to why they feel like they need to really try and change things. Bucky's getting to the point of where he just wants to take the shield, but Sam reminds him, like the last time we did that, Sharon was branded an enemy of the state, and Steve and him were on the run for 2 years. But the thing is, as I said, they're going to get the shield. So are they going to do that decision anyway? Is it going to be a dodgy situation? I really don't know. I can't imagine it's going to kill off John and it's going to be like a failure of the new Captain America. So Sam just takes up the shield anyway, doesn't completely take the mantle, but he uses it. I feel like that would be like a kind of way to go. So maybe they are eventually going to take the shield in a way maybe that I kind of proposed. But then again, they might be very frowned upon by the government in that sense. I mean, if you take the shield from the new Captain America, I can imagine that they're going to plaster that all over the news. This is where Bucky says that there's someone that Sam should meet, and this is where we learn that Isaiah was indeed a super soldier as well. Now, I found the scene really, really cool, and to be honest, I would really love a whole show about it. It's just fascinating that I kind of felt what Sam felt with how he said, so you're telling me that there was a black super soldier decades ago and nobody knew about it? Like, not even Steve knew about it? And the stuff he talked about, how he was poked, prodded, put in jail for 30 years. When Bucky explained how they were involved in the skirmish with each other during the Korean War, I would have loved to have seen in a similar way to a flashback in episode 1. Bucky as the Winter Soldier, like, you know, going at him. And then we see like a younger version of Isaiah with his super strength as well, and as he said, took off half his arm. And this paired with the whole cop thing as well. There was definitely messages trying to be made apparent. You know, the cops got out the car, they're like, what's up guys? Already the hand was on the gun saying, is this guy bothering you? And obviously Sam was just like, no dude, we're just talking. Like, why do I need to give you my ID? It's kind of transparent what they were doing, but that obviously is like a very relevant thing in the world. Like, you could literally just be having a conversation. People have had conversations, and I don't need to tell you this, and very similar situations unfold. And the only reason this one technically alleviated, it could have gone a different way, is because the other cop recognized that he was Falcon, an Avenger, and he was instantly profusely apologizing. I'm sorry, I didn't recognize you without the goggles. I'd love to know what you guys thought of that scene, but they had to arrest Bucky because he missed his court-mandated therapy, which leads us to what I was kind of mentioning earlier, back at the jail cell. We had John arriving, getting Bucky out of jail, but as I said, like at this point, it's almost like there's a whole different stance to the character and the actor. I think what I need to get down to here is that he's relishing a little bit too much in it. His true colors are slightly perhaps starting to go through. Some of you may say though in his defense, but like why should he necessarily be all happy-go-lucky with Sam and Bucky anymore if they're just completely shiting on him again and again and again? What more can a guy do? But yeah, at the end when he said stay out of my way, that is like, oh, I would have loved Sam to say, or what? What are you gonna do? That would have been Civil War level kind of vibes. Not obviously not like grand, but you get what I'm trying to say. Like, oh crap, what will you do if I don't stay out of your way? I want to know what you're gonna do. Now, from the trailers, just being very transparent, maybe you saw my trailer breakdown. I wasn't too happy about the idea of that therapy scene, the staring contest. I felt like, how can you have a show where there's really sincere kind of dramatic vibes, and then it just felt too typical from that trailer, which is what worried me, to have just had a staring contest. But it felt much more organic in the actual show itself. This scene actually instantly made me tear up. So obviously you had the soul-gazing exercise, and this is what I mean. The humor isn't too much. It's nicely balanced, and at least for me, for the Marvel formula. It's when it got to the point of when Bucky said that line, Sebastian Stan's delivery on that really pierced me. I don't know what it was. Maybe I'm just way too receptive to things like that. It's just that this was arguably groundbreaking therapy for at least Bucky in this session. Sam wasn't really wanting to have any of it, but Bucky said that, why did you give up that shield? Steve believed in you. He trusted you. He gave you that shield for a reason. That shield, that is everything he stood for. That is his legacy, and he gave you that shield and you threw it away like it was nothing. So maybe he was wrong about you. And if he was wrong about you, and this is where such vulnerability came out in him, then maybe he was wrong about me. Like, he can't... that was just so well done because it completely exposed his insecurities, because he can't face the fact that Steve might have been wrong about Sam, and I'm guessing he's internally figuring, wait, was Steve wrong about him? Because if Steve was wrong about him, Steve said that Bucky wasn't a monster. Bucky's been kind of relying on that. If he was wrong, then maybe he is a monster, because that's the whole conflict with Bucky this season. This is why I said in my last review, don't get me wrong, I'm very interested in Falcon and his story, his personal story, but Bucky is the obvious choice with a lot more rich material. He's got a lot more dramatic history, a lot more shite going on in his head. He isn't a monster, obviously, but with his haunting past of being an assassin for Hydra, it torments him. That's very obvious. I shouldn't need to explain it to anyone. But I loved the vulnerability that came with this scene. And I have to say, like, that voice crack, the tears, the shaky voice, that just hit me. And it was arguably one of my favorite scenes of the whole episode. At the very end of the episode, they just want to pick up on the lead of, well, I guess, Hydra's secrets. there was one guy who knew all about those, Baron Zemo. We knew that Baron Zemo was coming in the show. This could leak something to do with the superhuman stuff, maybe what happened to the superhuman stuff after the fact, which, as I mentioned earlier, lends to the power broker. Maybe he might name drop Curtis Jackson or something else, and that will pick them up on the lead of how the Flagsmashers stole stuff from the power brokers, and that's how they got a super serum. We're gonna have to wait and see all how that fleshes out. I kind of know where they could be heading, but as for the exact execution, who knows how they adapted it. So overall, guys, I would say very solid episode. I am thoroughly enjoying this. I thoroughly enjoyed this a lot more than episode 1. I really enjoyed episode 1, but I was still thinking, okay, let's see what this has got still. I think mainly last episode for me, I was missing that dynamic of Bucky and Falcon, but I completely understood why they played it that way. But now I feel like the ball is really rolling, and I feel like it'd be unfair to say that it was anything other than fairly solid. So I would love to know what you thought of this week's Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I'd love to know what you think of my theories, speculate upon my theories, build on top of them. Maybe there's something I missed out that you could link into the power brokers and what the Flagsmashers are doing and what will happen with Bucky, this, that, and the other. But I just love talking about this, guy, so I love reading every single one of your comments, so make sure you do leave one. And if you're going to leave one, I would really appreciate it if you left a like on this video and maybe subscribe for more content just like this. Check out the links in the top pinned comment, of course, to my Twitter, social media, places to support me. But thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you people of the Marvel Cinematic Universe in the next video. Goodbye.